Craig Claiborne was the first food editor of the New York Times, but that doesn't really begin to tell you who he was, because at the time he became food editor of the New York Times, which was 1957, there was no food world at all as we know it. So you really have to think about the context that at that time the United States was a world of overdone roast beef and canned green beans. And when Craig Claiborne began his career, there basically was no dining out in America. There were very few restaurants, and the ones there were lousy. For the most part, restaurants were things like little cafes in the bottom of a hotel where a traveling salesman would eat. Dining out for pleasure was almost unknown except for the very rich. And gradually, as he created the idea of restaurant criticism and began to bear down on the lousy restaurants of New York, and they began to respond by getting better and more numerous, and the rest of the country began to pick up on that. Dining out became pleasurable. People started to do it for fun, and it just built from there. We just didn't have the food culture that we have now, and that's what Craig, over time, created. In 1975, Craig sat down in front of the TV and was watching an auction, charity auction for the public television station in New York, and one of the items up for auction was dinner for two anywhere in the world, offered by American Express, anywhere that took the American Express card. And to his amazement, he won. And he immediately called his professional writing partner, Pierre Franet, and they thought, ha-ha, let's do this thing. And after considering many famous restaurants, they settled on one that was almost unknown, Chez Denis in Paris. And after conferring with the owner, Denis, they cooked up the idea of the fanciest dinner just imaginable, because there was no limit on what they could spend. And they ended up with a meal that took all day and well into the evening. It was actually really 3 dinners in one, with an array of the most expensive wines and the most expensive ingredients: foie gras, truffles, pheasant, partridge, etc. And ancient wines, 50-year-old wines, 100-year-old cognacs. And they spent $4,000. And the Times didn't even know he was doing this. But he wrote it up, and his bosses were impressed, and they put it on the front page of the Times. Nobody's ever spent $4,000 on dinner before. And there was just an explosion of outrage all over the country, all over the world, that anybody would be so decadent as to have spent $4,000 on dinner for 2 people. And it was, the letters, hundreds of letters poured into the Times, and allegedly, I didn't really find any proof of this, but allegedly it was condemned by the Vatican. And then there were waves of letters defending him in turn, saying, well, what if somebody had won a Mercedes-Benz? That wouldn't have been a big deal. In any case, it became a legendary dinner, and people continued to complain about it and to him and to the Times for years thereafter. There are a great many people who don't know now that he is responsible for this huge food-obsessed world we live in now. He was the father of the American food world.